So, you're starting a new aquarium. Maybe you're getting one for Christmas. Maybe you're giving one for Christmas. Here is going to be a simple to understand video on what you need to know before you get that aquarium. Grab yourself a snack and a beverage. Stand by. Welcome back to the channel, fishy folks. For those new here, my name is Michael from Michael's Fish Room. And today in this video, I'm going to go over some basic needs. If you're planning on starting a new aquarium, it is around Christmas time. If you're going to gift someone an aquarium, or if you think you're getting an aquarium as a gift for Hanukkah or Christmas or whatever holiday you celebrate, I don't really care. These are going to be some tips that you're going to need to know. If you're an experienced fish keeper, you may just want to watch. You might learn something, plus some quite entertaining. So the first thing you need to do is figure out what kind of fish you want, because that's going to change some other things that you're going to have to consider. Do you want schooling fish that swim a lot? Do you want just one centerpiece fish just to look at? Or do you want fish that you can breed easily and either trade at your local fish club or maybe even sell, online somewhere, or just to say you've bred fish before? These are all things you're going to want to consider before you buy your equipment. Okay, once you figure out your fish, that'll determine what size fish tank you want. Some of the common beginner sizes are 10-gallon or 20-gallon. The 20 gallons come in two separate sizes, either 20 long, which is shorter and longer, so it has a bigger footprint, or a 20 high, which is a little higher and narrower, which gives you more like swimming space in the middle. Now, when you decide on what kind of fish you want, you have to think about, do I want fish that swim along the top, along the middle, along the bottom, 2 out of the 3, all 3? These are all things to consider. And if you're going to start with a 20-gallon, which is my recommended size to start with, because they're inexpensive, there's quite a few videos about stocking a 20-gallon. And also, it's much more forgiving than a smaller tank, like a 5 or 10-gallon. But if you're going to want fish that swim a lot, say guppies or tetras, you're going to want that 20 long as you can fit that footprint to where you're going to put the tank. And that brings me to my next thing about deciding on what size tank you can fit and afford. You should get the biggest tank you can afford and fit, in my opinion. But like I said, a 20-gallon is a good place to start. I would take some blue painter's tape out on the floor, the dimensions of the stand and the tank that you're going to get, and make sure you're not bumping into it. Make sure your animals, don't sit in that space, and make sure, like if you're going to have to clean around it, you can certainly do that. The other thing to be aware of, where you put your fish tank, are there any windows? Because direct sunlight will cause an algae problem. Many people don't think about that. They put their tank in front of a window, and then 5 days after they set up their tank, it's green, and they don't know what to do, and they can't do anything about it. They quit and give up. And then I go and buy that tank really cheap on Marketplace. But that's a whole nother thing. Okay, after you figure out the size tank, where you're going to put it, all that stuff, you need to consider filtration. Now, there's many different kinds of filtration. I'm going to start at my least recommended and then finish with my most recommended. So the most complicated, in my opinion, is a canister filter. Are they complicated in general? No, but they're more complicated than the other types. They are a great filter. They do take a little bit to set up, but they're very customizable in the things you can put in them for the different filtration methods. But they're a little spendy at first and usually reserved for bigger tanks or tanks with a higher bioload. The other filter that I don't really recommend are internal filters. I've just never had good luck with them. And they take up a lot of space in the tank, and they're kind of ugly. In addition, if something goes wrong with that filter in the tank, it's more likely to damage or hurt your nitrogen cycle and your fish in the tank. Speaking of the nitrogen cycle, if you're not sure what that is or you've never heard that term before, stick around to the end when I talk about it. It is probably the most important part of fish keeping. Okay, the third filter that I actually do recommend, but it has some drawbacks, is a sponge filter. I love the sponge filter. I have it in all 60 of my tanks, in addition to some other filtration, but mostly sponge filters. They're great for biological media. They're easy to maintain, easy to clean. They do help with the oxygen exchange because they create those bubbles, but they are a little ugly and they're really not great at mechanical filtration. Now, the filter I recommend the most for beginners is a hang-on back filter. And this is exactly what it sounds like. It hangs on the back of the tank and it sucks water up through an intake. The water flows through the different filtration and then back into the tank as a waterfall. This also helps with the oxygen exchange because it breaks the surface tension of the water. Now, hang-on back filters are pretty inexpensive for what they do. Most of the newer ones are quiet, they're very customizable, and they're easy to maintain. I do not recommend following the maintenance schedule that the manufacturer recommends on these things because they recommend replacing things every month, and that's just so they can make money. I have plenty of videos on hang-on back filters, how to make them better, how to change filtration, how to clean them. I'll put some links up here for you to take a look at. But in general, they're very easy to use and set up, and I highly recommend the AquaClear brand of filters. Now, what's next on our list is not necessarily a must, but it's really going to depend on the type of fish you have. As an example, if you have a cold water species like goldfish, which you need a larger tank for, very easy to maintain, but you do need a larger volume of water, not a 20 gallon, at least a 40 gallon for one. But most fish in our hobby are tropical, where they come from waters that are 74, 78 degrees or warmer. And most houses just aren't that warm all the time. Some people keep their houses that warm, maybe during the day when they're home, or at night while they're sleeping when they're home, but while they're out, they drop the heat down to save on money. That may not be what's best for your fish, which means you're gonna need a heater. Now, there's a ton of different heaters out there. There's a ton of different brands. They're all pretty good. Some of them are better than others. Some of the cheap China ones really aren't that great. Do your research on heaters and pick one that suits your needs. There's a lot of talk on, you should split the wattage so that if one fails, you still have another one. It really doesn't matter. Heater, you're going to need one in most cases. Just get the best one you can afford. Okay. One more thing about heaters. They do make preset heaters. This will make sure your tank maintains 78 degrees. The problem with that is if the ambient temperature is colder than that heater can actually maintain, it's not going to get it to that range. In addition, you may want to raise the heat for some reason because you're getting, different fish like rams. They like it warmer, or a flower horn. They like it really warm. Your little preset heater is not going to help that. Or you may want to treat for a disease like ick, and then you're going to have to raise your temperature. I do not recommend those preset heaters. Lights. You're going to need a light. Now, if you're going to have plants, you're going to want a better light than if you're not going to have plants. And that's something you should think about in the beginning. Are you going to want live plants or silk plants? So there's nothing wrong with silk plants when you first start. Live plants are way better for your fish, way better for the ecosystem, and look cooler. And there's a ton of different kinds. And it's another part of the hobby. I like raising fish, but I really like, cultivating these plants and growing them and making sure the reds are red and, carpeted plants. There's so many different things. But it is more investment in time and money in your hobby. So maybe when you start, you get some really nice silk plants, if at all. But same thing with the light. There's a ton of different lights. There's, brands out there that I don't recommend. There's brands that I do recommend. I happen to really like the Aquarium Co Op line. But decide in the beginning what you want. Yes, I want live plants. Not right now. Well, when you buy your light, consider that so you don't have to buy a second light when you decide to do plants. What are the other things you're going to need? Because there are other things. Those were the main things for your tank, but you're going to need some more things, like how do you change water? Do you buy a Python? Do you just buy a pump right away like I use? How are you going to change water? Do you have buckets? Do you have a sink that's close enough? Are you going to be able to hook up your Python to your sink? There's all these things to think about, but water change equipment is definitely something you need to consider. What about tops? Do you want a glass top or do you want it open? There's a couple different things to think about. I highly recommend having tops because a lot of fish are jumpers. And when you decide on what kind of fish you want, like if you say, hey, I want an arowana right away, you're going to need glass tops and probably weights on those tops so that arowana doesn't jump out and kill itself. But if you're just going to get, some guppies, are they jumpers? Yeah, but they don't always jump out of a tank. You might not want the glass tops because you might decide you're going to want plants and you're going to want the plants to come out of the tank. That's up to you. I recommend glass tops, but it's up to you. You're going to need a net. Nets are nets. Get whatever size net that you're going to need for your fish. I recommend the longest one you can get because it's easier scooping fish, but that's just me. Food. You're going to need the correct food for your fish. If you have bottom fish, you're going to need food that sinks. If you have tetras or guppies or other fish that like to swim in the middle and the top, you're going to want floating food. Do you want flakes? Do you want live food? Do you want frozen food? Do you want pellets? There's a ton of different kinds. And everyone has an opinion about fish food in general. What's the best one? What's the most economical? I would get some good quality food, maybe 2 different kinds. So there's a little variety of different nutrients and other things. I highly recommend the Dr. Basilier's line. But what food you get is up to you. Just remember, just because your fish love the food doesn't mean it's good for you. I love bacon, but after my second heart attack, actually after my first heart attack, I stopped eating it for the most part. All right, you're going to need a water conditioner. There's 2 main brands, Seachem and Fritz. I like the Fritz products better. Little smaller company, a little harder to find. I just happen to like them. Both of them work the same. There's Seachem Prime and Fritz Complete. Other brands make it and they all kind of do the same thing. I like the Seachem Prime and the Fritz Complete because if you run into a problem with your cycle, you can use those products to help you through that. I have a video on that. I'll put that link up here for you. On what to do. But you're going to need definitely a water conditioner. Even if you're on well water, you're going to need a conditioner. What the conditioner does is neutralize chlorine and chloramines to make the water safe for your fish. It also removes some heavy metals and some things like that. Decorations. Do you want to decorate the tank? Is your kid a ginormous SpongeBob fan? So you're going to get the pineapple and you're going to get, the other SpongeBob stuff. It's up to you. Just keep in mind, some fish will get stuck in certain decorations, so keep that in mind. And the last thing, medications. All fish are going to need some kind of medication at some point. So the question you need to ask yourself is, do I buy them in the beginning, or do I buy them as needed and hope what I need is available locally so I don't kill my fish because I bought a sick fish or my fish got sick? Now, there's a ton of videos on quarantine and all this other stuff, which you have to think about. But as a beginner, you're probably not going to quarantine. You're probably not going to have a hospital tank and things like this. So you're definitely going to have to think about what happens when my fish get sick. I'm not saying buy all the meds in the world right now, but maybe consider having a good antibiotic that treats gram-positive and gram-negative, at the same time. A good broad spectrum one may be on hand. But that's up to you. I'm not going to go into the actual medicines and what they fix because this is just a beginner video. Lastly, the most important thing to know about is the nitrogen cycle. If you don't know about the nitrogen cycle, you need to. It is the single most important thing to know about fish keeping. In simple terms, the nitrogen cycle is converting fish waste through to something called nitrate. So fish waste is ammonia, pee and poop ammonia. deadly to fish. Any ammonia in your tank, deadly to fish. One bacteria takes that ammonia and converts it to nitrite with an I. Nitrite, also deadly to fish, even in low amounts. Another bacteria will convert that nitrate to nitrate. Another bacteria will convert the nitrite to nitrate with an A. Nitrate, not so deadly in low doses. Maybe over 40 or 60 parts per million, you might start to see some problems, but in general, really not an issue. The nitrogen cycle and nitrates are why we have to change water in our fish tanks at a certain time. And there's, again, plenty of videos on that. Here's a video link that I did about water changes to make your life easy. But you have to know about the nitrogen cycle, because if you don't, you will kill your fish. It's that simple. Again, here's a video about the nitrogen cycle I did. It's in very simple terms. I use the KISS method, keep it simple, stupid. So it's easy to understand. Now, there's one other thing you're going to have to consider buying. And maybe you don't buy it right away, but a water test kit. Now, there's two different schools of thought on this. There's two different kinds. There's test strips, and then there's liquid test kits. I just did a video reviewing the Fritz Master test kit. It tests freshwater and saltwater, and it's a great kit. The holy grail, if you will, or the most common one, I should say, in the United States is the API Freshwater Master Test Kit. I think it's about 20 bucks on Amazon. There's a link down below for you. You don't need that. The Fritz kit is really good. It's a little spendy though. Test strips, when used correctly, are just as accurate. Don't let anyone on the internet who's never tried them tell you they're not as accurate. They really are. For everything we need them for, test strips are fine. And the initial investment is less. I have plenty of videos on test strips. Check them out if you will. But you can certainly buy the 5-in-1 test strip, which tests nitrite, nitrate, pH, TDS, or hardness, and GH and KH, basically. And then you're going to need a second bottle of test strips for ammonia. The ammonia test strip can't be with the other test strips, because the chemical used will contaminate the other tests. So you need those two test strips. Again, some people say they don't work. In my experience, 40 years in the hobby, they work fine, especially when used correctly. All right, fishy folks, that does it for my simple introduction to starting a new fish tank. Hope you guys enjoyed this video, and have a great Hanukkah, Christmas, Kwanzaa, whatever you celebrate. I'm an equal opportunity hater, so you know I don't really care. I'm just trying to be nice. Anyway, have a great day, folks. Hiya, fishy folks. If you're new here, my name is Michael from Michael's Fish Room. If you like this kind of content and you think I'm funny and handsome and entertaining, please consider subscribing. So today I'm going to talk about a very basic, no. If you can, now the filter I recommend, I don't even know what the hell I'm saying. In simple terms, there's three main parameters. There's more parameters, but there's three more.